Dad canceled my 18th birthday party as golden child brother wanted a weekend getaway. So a couple of weeks ago, I was all set for my 18th birthday. I'd been looking forward to it for months. I mean, 18 is a big deal, right? I had this whole plan with my friends. Hang out, maybe go to the movies, grab some dinner, nothing too crazy. It was supposed to be simple but fun. Plus, my dad, Will, had agreed to pay for everything, which was nice because, well, I don't have much money of my own yet. But of course, my little brother Matt had to ruin everything. Matt's 15, and to be real, he's my dad's favorite. It's not even a secret at this point. He's been dad's golden boy ever since our mom, Sharon, passed away from cancer a couple of years ago. Ever since then, Matt can basically do whatever he wants, and dad just goes along with it. Meanwhile, I'm the one who's just expected to deal with it. So, the day before my birthday, everything's fine. I'm excited. My friends are texting me. We're talking about what we're gonna do. And then Matt comes into the room throwing one of his classic tantrums. Turns out he didn't make the school football team. Honestly, it's not a shocker. Matt's not great at sports. He likes to think he is, but he's kind of lazy and has zero team spirit. Still, he takes it like it's the end of the world. He's all worked up, saying he needs to get away for the weekend to clear his head. I'm sitting there like, wait, what? I mean, it's my birthday. My birthday. I've been planning this for months and now he wants to just disappear? I'm thinking there's no way Dad's gonna let this happen, right? Wrong. Dad, being dad, listens to Matt whine for maybe 5 minutes before saying, sure, we can go up to the cabin. The cabin? God, I hate that place. It's this little thing my dad's friend owns, way out in the woods, and every time Matt throws one of his fits, they head there to fish and chill. Matt loves fishing, him and Dad both actually, but I don't. I've never been a fan of the woods or anything outdoorsy, to be honest. I get why they go, but why did they have to pick this weekend? Of all weekends, it had to be the one when I turn 18. So I try to speak up. I'm like, wait, what about my birthday? We had plans. I'm thinking maybe Dad just forgot. Maybe he'll realize what's going on and be like, oh yeah, your birthday. We can do both. But nope. Matt starts saying how he really needs this trip and how he's had such a rough week, and Dad just eats it up. And that's when I kind of snap. I tell them both that there's no way I'm staying home by myself on my birthday while they go on some stupid fishing trip. Like, this happens all the time. Ever since Mom died, they've been running off to the cabin, leaving me at home to deal with everything by myself. And usually, I don't mind staying home alone. It's kind of nice, to be honest. But on my birthday? No. Just no. But Matt, being the selfish little brat that he is, says he doesn't want me to come. He straight up tells Dad that if I'm there, it'll ruin his trip because he doesn't want to deal with me. And somehow Dad agrees with him. It's like I'm invisible to him or something. He doesn't even bother to ask me if I want to come. He just takes Matt's side and that's it. End of discussion. At this point, I'm fuming. I tell Dad that if he doesn't let me have my birthday plans, I'll just invite my friends over anyway. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? But Dad gives me this whole speech about how if I do that, he'll cut me off from my college fund. And I'm supposed to start college in a few months, so I can't risk that. It's not like I have any other way to pay for it. So I'm stuck. I have no choice but to cancel my birthday plans, and I end up spending the entire day alone while they drive off to the cabin. No party, no friends, just me and my phone. I mean, my friends texted me happy birthday and all, but it wasn't the same. I spent most of the day feeling sorry for myself, and honestly, I cried myself to sleep that night. I know it sounds dramatic, but it really sucked. I just wanted one day, my day, and Matt couldn't even let me have that. The worst part is, Dad didn't even seem to care. Before they left, he tried to make it better by saying we could celebrate when they got back. He was like, we'll have an even bigger party next weekend. I'll give you more money for it. But the thing is, I didn't want more money or a bigger party. I just wanted to spend my actual birthday with my friends, like a normal person. But of course, that was too much to ask. By the end of the day, I was just tired. Tired of always being the one left behind. Tired of Matt always getting his way. Tired of Dad acting like my feelings didn't matter. And the thing is, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. It's been going on ever since Mom passed. Whenever Matt wants something, he gets it. Whenever I need something, it's like, oh, you'll be fine. You're older. You can handle it. But being older doesn't mean I don't need anything. It doesn't mean I don't want to be treated like I matter. I get that Matt's younger and he's more like Dad. He's into sports and fishing and all that. But that doesn't mean I'm just irrelevant. But that's how it feels sometimes. Like I'm just this extra person in their lives who they can forget about when it's convenient for them. And I know it sounds petty, but I couldn't help thinking about how different things were when Mom was still here. She was the one who kept things balanced. She didn't let Matt get away with everything, and she made sure I was included. But now, without her, it's like everything's changed. And I get it. Dad's probably still grieving in his own way. But it feels like he's using that as an excuse to just focus on Matt and ignore me. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept going over all the times Dad had put Matt first and all the times I'd been pushed aside, and it just made me angry. Not just at Dad and Matt, but at myself too. I kept thinking, why do I let this happen? Why don't I stand up for myself more? But then I remember why. Because whenever I do, Dad threatens to take something away, like my college fund, and I can't afford to lose that. So yeah, that's how I ended up spending my 18th birthday. Alone, angry, and wondering if things will ever change. Spoiler, they probably won't. So, after my depressing birthday and everything, I wake up the next morning still feeling like crap. You know, that kind of feeling where you just don't want to get out of bed because everything feels pointless? Yeah, that. But then, out of nowhere, the doorbell rings. And it's early. Like, way too early for anyone to be visiting, especially since Dad and Matt are gone, and I hadn't invited anyone over. I almost didn't answer it. I was still half asleep, and honestly, I didn't expect it to be anyone important. But the doorbell kept ringing like whoever was out there wasn't about to leave anytime soon. So I drag myself out of bed, throw on some clothes, and shuffle downstairs, thinking it's probably just a delivery guy or something. But when I open the door, I'm completely shocked. It's my grandpa, Walt, sitting there in his wheelchair with his nurse next to him. I literally just stood there for a second, processing it. I hadn't seen Grandpa in a while, and he never just shows up without telling us first, especially not since the accident. For those who don't know, Grandpa's in a wheelchair because he lost both his legs in a car crash a couple of years ago, not long after Mom passed away. It's been tough on him, and we don't get to see him much anymore, since he lives out of state. The last time I saw him was last Christmas, and even then, it wasn't the same. He's been super quiet since Grandma passed, which, honestly, isn't surprising. He lost his wife and daughter within months of each other. It's like life just hit him with everything all at once. Anyway, I'm standing there, totally surprised, and the first thing that comes out of my mouth is, "Grandpa, what are you doing here?" Like, it's obvious I'm happy to see him, but I just didn't get it. He's not exactly in the best shape to be traveling, and it's a long trip from where he lives to here, but he just smiled, even though he looked tired, and said, "I couldn't miss my granddaughter's birthday, could I?" And that's when I just lost it. I started crying, like, really crying, right there at the door. I'm not even sure why it hit me so hard. Maybe it was the fact that Grandpa had come all the way here just for me, when Dad and Matt couldn't even be bothered to stay. Or maybe it was because it was the first time in a long time that I actually felt like someone cared about me. Like, really cared. I don't know, it was just overwhelming. Grandpa looked a little worried when I started crying, probably because he didn't expect that reaction, but he wheeled himself inside and told me to sit down. His nurse, who was super nice by the way, helped him get settled, and then she quietly stepped out to give us some space. I sat down on the couch trying to pull myself together, and Grandpa was like, "Tell me what's going on." At first, I didn't want to. I mean, I've always been the type to keep stuff to myself, especially when it comes to family drama. But something about the way Grandpa asked made me feel like I could finally open up. So, I told him everything about the canceled birthday, about how Dad and Matt treat me, about how things have been since Mom passed. I just laid it all out there. And you know what? Grandpa listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to make excuses for Dad or Matt. He just let me talk. And when I was done, he didn't say anything for a minute. He just kind of sat there, thinking. I could see he was upset, though. He wasn't the type to get angry easily, but I could tell this was really bothering him. Finally, he looked at me and said, "You shouldn't have to put up with that." Simple as that. I don't know why, but hearing those words felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. It's like I'd been telling myself for so long that this was just the way things were, that I had to deal with it. But hearing Grandpa say it, it made me realize that no, I didn't have to just accept it. Then Grandpa did something I didn't expect at all. He told me, "Why don't you come live with me for a while?" At first, I didn't know if he was serious. Like, I've always loved Grandpa, but moving in with him, that's a big step. But he was serious. He said that since I was about to start college soon, and my school was closer to his place than here, it would make sense for me to stay with him. Plus, he said he didn't like the idea of me being alone here with Dad and Matt treating me like this. I couldn't believe it. I mean, yeah, I'd thought about leaving before, but I never actually had a real option, you know? And now here was Grandpa giving me the chance to get out. It felt like I could breathe for the first time in a long time. We talked about it for a while, and the more we talked, the more it made sense. I'd have more space to focus on school, I wouldn't have to deal with the constant favoritism, And most importantly, I'd be with someone who actually cared about me. So I agreed. I was going to move in with Grandpa. But here's the kicker. Wait, not supposed to use that word, scratch that. He wasn't leaving until Dad got home. I've got a few things to say to your father, he told me. And honestly, that made me kind of nervous. I've never seen Grandpa confront anyone before, especially not Dad. But I guess there's a first time for everything. That whole day, we just hung out. Grandpa asked me more about school, what my plans were for college, and stuff like that. It felt so normal, like the kind of conversation I should have been having with Dad but never did. I told him how I was nervous about starting college, but also excited to finally get away from home. He nodded like he totally understood. Then at one point, he looked at me and said, "You're going to be fine, you know that?" I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until he said it. It wasn't the same empty reassurances I sometimes got from friends or teachers. It felt real, like Grandpa knew I could handle whatever was coming. By the time Dad and Matt got back from their trip, I was ready. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't staying here anymore. Grandpa was about to drop a bomb on Dad, and I was going to be free. So, Dad and Matt finally came back from their little fishing trip the next morning. I was already awake because, well, I couldn't sleep much after everything that happened the day before. Grandpa was staying over for the night, and even though he was pretty chill, I could tell he was still pissed about everything I told him. He wasn't the type to lose his temper, but man, when he was mad, you could feel it in the air. I heard the car pull up, and immediately, my stomach did that weird thing where it twists up in knots. I didn't know how Dad was going to react when he saw Grandpa sitting in the living room. I mean, they've always had a decent relationship, but this was different. Grandpa wasn't here for a casual visit. He was here to confront Dad, and I knew it wasn't going to be pretty. Matt was the first to walk through the door, all smug like usual, probably thinking nothing had changed. He didn't even notice Grandpa at first. He just tossed his bag on the floor and started heading up the stairs. But then he stopped mid-step when he saw Grandpa sitting there. His face kind of froze for a second, and you could tell he wasn't expecting this at all. "Grandpa? What are you doing here?" Matt asked, his voice dripping with confusion. He probably thought Grandpa had come for a surprise visit, like some happy family reunion. But nope, this wasn't that kind of visit. Before Grandpa could even answer, Dad walked in, carrying a couple of fishing rods and looking tired but happy. I could tell he was in a good mood, probably because he thought they'd just had the perfect little father-son trip while I was home alone, forgotten as usual. But then he saw Grandpa, and it was like a switch flipped. His smile dropped, and suddenly he looked nervous. Like, really nervous. "Dad," he said, setting the fishing rods down. "What's going on? You didn't say you were coming." Grandpa didn't waste any time. He didn't even bother with small talk or pleasantries. He just looked right at Dad and said, "We need to talk, Will." And that was it. Just 4 words, but the tension in the room shot up to about 100. Matt, sensing that things were about to get serious, mumbled something about going to his room and started slinking upstairs. Classic move, avoiding any confrontation that didn't involve him. Dad, on the other hand, looked like he'd been caught doing something he shouldn't have. He glanced at me, probably trying to figure out what I'd told Grandpa, but I didn't give him anything. I just sat there quietly, waiting for the storm to hit. "Let's sit down," Grandpa said, his voice calm but firm. He wasn't asking. He was telling. Dad hesitated for a second, but then nodded and sat down across from him. I didn't know what to do with myself, so I just kind of hovered in the background, not really wanting to leave, but not sure if I should be there. Grandpa noticed, though, and he turned to me and said, "You should hear this, too. Sit down." So I sat. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the tension crackling between them. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat, and I think he was trying to figure out how bad this conversation was going to get. Grandpa started slow, which surprised me. He didn't immediately jump into an attack, even though I knew he was mad. He began by talking about Mom. He talked about how much he missed her and how losing her was the hardest thing he's ever gone through. I could see Dad getting more and more uncomfortable because, let's be real, he probably didn't want to talk about Mom at all. But then, Grandpa shifted gears. "I'm here because I've been hearing things about how you've been treating your daughter," he said, his voice dropping into that serious tone that makes people sit up straight and pay attention. Dad didn't say anything at first. He just stared at Grandpa, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. After a long pause, he finally managed to stammer out, "What do you mean?" Grandpa didn't hold back after that. He laid everything out. The favoritism toward Matt, the constant neglect, how I'd been left alone on my birthday. All of it. Every word he said felt like a hammer coming down on Dad. And honestly, it was kind of satisfying to see someone finally call him out on all the crap he's pulled over the years. Dad tried to defend himself at first. He started with, "It's not like that, and she's old enough to handle things on her own." But Grandpa wasn't having any of it. Every excuse Dad made, Grandpa shot down. He wasn't yelling or anything, but he didn't need to. His words were cutting enough. Then Grandpa dropped the big one. "You're treating her like she doesn't matter," he said, his voice sharp. "Your daughter just turned 18, and you couldn't even be bothered to stay home for her birthday. You chose to take Matt fishing instead." Dad's face turned red. I could tell he was embarrassed, maybe even ashamed, but he still didn't apologize. Instead, he tried to shift the blame. "Matt's going through a lot right now," he said. "He needed this. It's been tough for him." "Has it ever occurred to you that it's been tough for her too?" Grandpa shot back, pointing at me. "She lost her mother too, Will. But you're acting like she's fine just because she doesn't throw tantrums like Matt." That hit home. I could see it in Dad's eyes. He knew Grandpa was right. But instead of apologizing or admitting he was wrong, Dad just sat there, staring at the floor like a kid who'd been caught doing something bad. And then Grandpa said something that surprised both of us. "I'm taking her with me," he said. "She's going to live with me until she starts college. She doesn't need to stay in a house where she's not treated like family." Dad looked up, shocked. "You can't just take her," he said, his voice shaky. "This is her home." "No, it's not," Grandpa said, his voice cold. "Not anymore." I was sitting there, feeling a mix of emotions, relief, fear, excitement. It was all hitting me at once. I wanted to go with Grandpa. I wanted out of this house, away from the constant favoritism and neglect. But part of me was scared too. What if leaving just made things worse? What if Dad never wanted to see me again after this? But then Grandpa turned to me and said, "You deserve better than this. You're coming with me, and we'll figure the rest out." And that was it. Dad didn't fight anymore. He just sat there, staring at the floor, not saying a word. I think he realized that he had no right to argue. I think deep down, he knew he'd screwed up, but he was too stubborn to admit it. So I packed my things. Grandpa and I left the house that afternoon, and as we drove away, I looked back one last time. I didn't see Dad or Matt waving goodbye. They didn't even come to the door. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally doing something for me. So after that intense confrontation with Dad, I packed up my stuff and Grandpa and I left the house. We didn't talk much on the drive. I think we were both processing what had just gone down. I mean, it wasn't every day that you basically just left your life behind. I kept thinking about how everything happened so fast. One minute I was stuck in a house where I felt invisible, and the next I was driving away with my grandpa to start over. The ride was mostly quiet, except for Grandpa asking me a couple of times if I was okay. I told him I was, but honestly I wasn't sure what to feel. It was weird. On one hand, I felt relief. Like I didn't have to deal with Dad or Matt anymore, at least for a while. But on the other hand, I couldn't shake this feeling of guilt. Like, maybe I just abandoned my family. It's strange how, even when people treat you like crap, you still feel bad when you finally stand up for yourself. Anyway, we got to the hotel that night since Grandpa wanted to rest before we made the full trip back to his place. It wasn't anything fancy, just a basic hotel off the highway. Grandpa had already arranged for my stuff to be sent over, so we didn't have to lug around my bags or anything, which was nice. Once we got settled in the room, Grandpa ordered pizza, and we sat on the bed eating in silence for a while. I kept expecting him to bring up what had happened earlier, maybe ask me how I was feeling about the whole thing, but he didn't. He was just there, calm and quiet, which I guess was his way of letting me take it all in without pushing me. Eventually, after I finished my slice, I started talking. I don't even know why, it just kind of came out. I told him how weird it felt to leave, how part of me felt like I should have stayed or at least tried to fix things with Dad. I mean, he's still my dad, right? Shouldn't I be trying to make it work? Grandpa just listened, nodding along while I rambled. After I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said something that stuck with me. "It's okay to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they're family." He wasn't angry or anything, just matter of fact. Sometimes the people who are supposed to take care of you are the ones who do the most damage. You don't owe them anything if they can't even give you basic respect. That hit me hard. I hadn't thought about it like that before. I'd always assumed that family was family no matter what, and that you just had to deal with whatever they threw at you. But hearing Grandpa say it like that, it made me realize that I had a choice. I didn't have to stay in a place where I wasn't valued. I didn't have to keep trying to please people who couldn't be bothered to care about me. The next morning, we hit the road again. Grandpa's house was a couple of states away, so it took us most of the day to get there. I was feeling a mix of emotions, excited to be starting fresh, but also kind of anxious about what that really meant. I hadn't spent much time at Grandpa's since the accident, and I didn't know what it'd be like living with him full time. When we finally pulled up to his place, though, all that anxiety started to fade away. His house was cozy, not too big, not too small. Just a nice, homey place tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. The front yard was overgrown, and you could tell it hadn't been kept up with, but the house itself was still in good shape. "Sorry about the mess," Grandpa said, chuckling as we walked up to the door. "I'm not as spry as I used to be, but I manage." Inside, it was like stepping back in time. The walls were lined with old family photos, some of them from when I was a kid, and the furniture was the same stuff I remembered from when I used to visit as a little girl. It smelled like wood polish and old books, and for the first time in a while, I felt safe, like I was in a place where I could just breathe. Grandpa showed me to my room, which used to be the guest room but was now officially mine. It was simple, just a bed, a dresser, and a small desk by the window, but it was perfect. I sat on the bed, taking it all in while Grandpa wheeled himself in and asked if I needed anything. "Nah, I'm good," I said, smiling for what felt like the first time in days. "This is nice." "I'm glad you're here," Grandpa said, and I could tell he really meant it. The next few days were pretty low-key. Grandpa and I settled into a routine pretty fast. He had his nurse come by a couple of times a week to help him with things, but for the most part, he was independent. I helped out where I could, mostly with stuff around the house like cooking and cleaning. It wasn't anything major, but it felt good to be useful, to feel like I was contributing something instead of just being a burden. We didn't talk about Dad or Matt much. It's like we both silently agreed that we didn't need to dwell on it. I was focusing on getting ready for college, and Grandpa was helping me with whatever I needed. Buying supplies, figuring out what I needed to pack, all that stuff. It felt like, for the first time in forever, I wasn't walking on eggshells. But then, about a week after I moved in, Dad texted me. I remember it so clearly because I'd been half expecting him to reach out sooner. The message was simple. He said he was sorry. He said he didn't realize how much he'd hurt me, and that he wanted to make things right. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to believe him, to think that maybe this was a turning point and that we could fix things. But another part of me, the part that had been ignored and brushed aside for years, wasn't so sure. I mean, it's easy to say sorry after the fact, but words don't change what's already been done. I showed the message to Grandpa, hoping he'd have some advice. He read it and then handed the phone back to me without saying much. After a while, he finally spoke up. "It's up to you if you want to forgive him," he said. "But just remember, an apology doesn't erase the past. It's what they do next that matters." And he was right. I didn't respond to Dad right away. I decided to take my time, to think things through before jumping into anything. After all, I was in a good place now, and I didn't want to mess that up by diving back into a situation that had hurt me for so long. College was starting soon, and I had a lot on my plate. I didn't need the extra drama. For now, I was focused on the future, on building a life that wasn't controlled by the people who couldn't see my worth. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was actually in control of my own story. So, it's been a few months since I moved in with Grandpa, and honestly, things have been going pretty well. I'm not gonna lie. At first, I thought living with him would be weird, especially after everything that went down with Dad. But it hasn't been like that at all. It's been peaceful, I guess. I started college not long after I moved in, and it's been a whole new experience. I'd always dreamed about going to college, but I never really thought about what it'd feel like to actually be there, living away from home, figuring things out on my own. And now, here I am, doing it. The funny thing is, once I got to college, everything about home, Dad, Matt, the house, all the crap I dealt with, just sort of faded into the background. It's like I finally had the space to just be, to think about myself for a change, instead of constantly worrying about what Dad or Matt needed, or what I wasn't getting from them. I know it sounds cheesy, but it was like this weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I've made some friends too, which, to be real, I wasn't expecting to happen so fast. I'm not exactly a social butterfly, and I figured it'd take me a while to meet people. But the second week, I met this girl, Kayla, who's in a couple of my classes. She's super chill, and we just kind of clicked. Before I knew it, I had a little group, Kayla, and then a couple of other people from our dorm. It's nothing like high school, where everyone was in these cliques. College is different. People just hang out because they get along, not because they feel like they have to. Anyway, classes have been going well. A little more intense than I expected, but I'm managing. Grandpa's been a big help with keeping me grounded. He calls me a couple of times a week to check in, and whenever I go back to his place on weekends, he's always there, ready to listen if I need to vent about anything. It's been nice, having that stability. I never realized how much I needed it until I got it, but of course, life isn't all perfect. About a month into school, Dad texted me again. It was a pretty long message this time. He said he missed me, that the house felt empty without me, and that he was sorry for everything that happened before I left. He kept going on about how he wanted to fix things, how he knew he'd been wrong, and how he was ready to make it up to me. Part of me wanted to believe him. I really did. I mean, I missed my dad too. Or at least, I missed the idea of having a dad who cared. But I also couldn't forget all the years of feeling like I didn't matter, like I was always second place to Matt. I'd been burned too many times to just jump back into things with him like nothing had happened. I didn't respond right away. I showed the message to Grandpa again, and he just nodded, like he knew this was coming. "It's up to you, but don't feel rushed," he said, in that calm, steady way he always talks. "You've got time to figure out what you want." And that's the thing. This time I felt like I did have time. I didn't need to rush back into a relationship with Dad just because he said sorry. For once, I could take my time and decide what was best for me. A couple more weeks went by, and I still didn't respond. I thought about it, sure, but every time I went to type something, I stopped. It just didn't feel right yet. I wasn't ready to go back to that. Not when I was finally starting to feel like my own person. But then, something happened that really shook me up. One weekend, I was back at Grandpa's, and we were just sitting in the living room watching TV when his phone rang. He answered it, and I could tell right away that something was wrong by the way his face changed. He didn't say much, just nodded and gave a few short answers before hanging up. "What's going on?" I asked, already feeling that pit forming in my stomach. Grandpa sighed, rubbing his face like he was trying to find the right words. "It's your dad," he said finally. "He had a heart attack." I just sat there, stunned. I didn't know what to say. I mean, yeah, Dad wasn't young, but he wasn't old either. A heart attack? It felt unreal. "He's in the hospital now," Grandpa continued. "The doctors think he'll be okay, but it was serious." I didn't even know how to react. Part of me felt this rush of panic, like I needed to drop everything and go see him. But another part of me, the part that had been holding on to all that anger and hurt, wasn't sure if I could. I hadn't talked to him since he texted me weeks ago, and now this? It felt like the universe was throwing me some kind of messed up test. Grandpa didn't pressure me. He just gave me space to process it. He said we could go visit Dad if I wanted to, or we could wait and see how things went. I appreciated that. He wasn't trying to force me into doing anything I wasn't ready for. That night, I lay awake for hours, thinking about everything. Thinking about all the times Dad had made me feel invisible, all the times he chose Matt over me, all the hurt I'd carried with me for so long. But then I thought about the good times, too. There were moments when Dad had been there for me, moments when it felt like we had a real connection, even if they were few and far between. By the next morning, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to pretend like everything was fine between us, but I also couldn't just ignore the fact that he was my dad. So I told Grandpa that I wanted to go see him, at least to hear him out. I wasn't making any promises, but I needed to see for myself what was going on. When we got to the hospital, it was weird seeing Dad like that. He looked tired, weak, vulnerable, in a way I'd never seen him before. I guess that's what a heart attack does to you. It knocks you down a peg. He didn't say much at first, just looked at me with this expression that I couldn't quite read. But after a while, he finally spoke. "I'm glad you came," he said, his voice raspy. I nodded, not really sure what to say. It wasn't exactly a happy reunion. We both had a lot of baggage between us, and it was going to take more than a hospital visit to fix that. "I know I've been a crappy dad," he continued after a long pause. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to try. I want to be better." I could hear the sincerity in his voice, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, he meant it. I didn't know what the future held for us, but as I sat there, holding my dad's hand, I realized that maybe it was time to start letting go of some of that anger. Not for him, but for me. Because if there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that holding on to pain doesn't make you stronger. It just keeps you stuck in the past, and I was ready to move forward.